So this is the way you decompose, correct? You decompose the entire element into different parts, okay, which becomes very important for all of you. That why these decompositions are necessary? Why these decompositions are necessary? Because now you may say that V is nothing but the summation of all these components, okay, which is a vector, and these are all scalar quantities or the speed. Essentially you call them as, this is x directional speed, this is y directional speed, this is z directional speed. And if I have a vector summation of all these three, I get a vector which is called V. And typically either I define like this or I put a cap symbol on top of that. So this is the way I define a vector. So vector is a composite quantity. It is not an independent quantity, whereas the scalars are all independent quantities. Okay. Now, when each scalar is having a direction, so this is the direction associated with this x, this is the direction associated with y, and this is the direction associated with the z. Correct? So that is the reason why you are looking forward to have a definition called vector. Say suppose A, this is a vector. Okay, say B, this is a vector. Okay, suppose this A is a vector. Suppose this C, this is a vector. Okay. Now you do different types of operations, like say suppose addition, say suppose multiplication. Okay, say suppose subtraction. You do different types of multiplication associated with these vectors in order to get the resultant quantity. And whatever mathematics associated with that is called the vectors and tensors. So these are all very trivial thing. Now you know that vectors are expressed in terms of what? In terms of unit vectors, right? So how is it done? So vectors are expressed in terms of what? So they are expressed in terms of, say, suppose I say that a vector is A. Okay, how do I write? I start using a notation which is not there in the lecture note. I start using a notation. This will be helpful for me as I progress. So I say that this A is nothing but A1, E1, comma, A2, E2, okay, comma, A3, E3. Okay. In this, now I have used three different notations. One is called E1, the other is called E2, and the other is called E3. These are called what? These are called the unit vectors. Okay. So I summarize these three in order to write what? In order to write, say, suppose EI. Okay. And then I summarize A to write EI. What do I mean by I? I is 1, 2, 3. I is 1, 2, 3. So A1, E1 is my x directional. E1 is my x directional vector. E2 is my y directional vector. E3 is my z directional vector. And these are all unit vectors. What do you mean by unit vector? Say suppose if you look at a graph paper. Say suppose if I draw a graph paper, the unit that is there. So this is the unit in the x direction. This is the unit in the y direction. Essentially, E1 and E2 are meant by that. So I can define a vector called A, which is equal to A1 E1 plus A2 E2 plus A3 E3, or A1 E1, comma A2 E2, comma A3 E3. Okay, this is the most generic way of defining the whole thing, which is equal to AI EI, and this particular thing is called the indicial notation. This I is the index, and this notation is called the indicial notation. I, that means, if you have two i's which are repeated in nature, so you write A1 E1, A2 E2, and A3 E3. So this is why I go for I, because I can be, you can write here I equal to what? So I can be 0n. So right now you are working in a three-dimensional space. Now, moment you express a vector like this, so this becomes an n-dimensional space. So your definition becomes more generic. You can really go, you can really extend. Now vector you can write in a form what? You can write a vector in a form like, say suppose you start with what? Suppose you start with what? Say suppose you write that A1 E1, okay, comma A2 E2, comma, okay, A3 E3. Okay, and then you keep writing dot 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 until what? AN EN. Okay, this is essentially what you write as this is equal to what is that? This is equal to AI and EI. So this is the way of writing a kind of n-dimensional vector in the simplified form. Okay, very good. Now once that is done, then what happens? So you can A is defined as this, which is AXX. That means AX here I am talking about A1. AX I am talking about A1, and X cap is what? X cap is my E1, AYY, AZZ. So this you can see that this can be straight away mapped to A1 E1, A2 E2, and A3 E3. Similarly, B1 E1, B2 E2, and B3 E3. Okay. Now this is the way you add the vectors. This is the way you obtain. You know, multiplication is different types for a vector. This particular product is called a dot product, and this particular product is called a cross product. Typically, what is a dot product? How do you do a dot product? Say suppose you have a vector which is called, say suppose AI EI. You have a vector that is, say suppose you have a vector that is AI and EI. Okay. Now you do a dot product with what? You do a dot product with BJ EJ. Great. Now you see that why did I do J with respect to I? Because I'm using different indices. I don't want to mix up the coordinates. Correct. Now when I do such a dot product, what is the typical answer for this? That do a very simple thing here. What I say that this whenever I have two dot products, whenever I have a dot product between two coordinate systems or two unit vectors, then I introduce a concept called delta IJ. And this particular symbol is called the famous Kronecker delta symbol. Okay. From where is it originating? It is not originating from, this is the scalar part. This is the scalar part, and this is the vector part of the vector. Okay, these are the unit vectors. So what am I saying that A1 E1 means E1 is the unit and A1 times of E1. That is the total quantity. So whenever you have these unit vectors, and if you take a dot product, the unit vectors, you know, dot product means you are projecting this vector to that vector or this vector to that vector. It's commutative in terms of multiplication. Now, when you do that, it leads to a symbol called delta IJ, and then you write what? AI BJ. Okay. Now, what is this Kronecker delta? Kronecker delta, by definition, it has got two different angles. What is that? Say this is equal to 1. You know, when I is equal to J. This is equal to 1, and this is equal to 0 when I not equal to J. Great. So that means, you know, 1 1 it will be 1, 2 2 it will be 1, 3 3 it will be 1, whereas 1 2 it will be 0, 2 1 it will be 0, 3 1 will be 0. So what will lead to? This will lead to what? This will lead to AI BI, which is your answer to the dot product. Typically, when you take a dot product, what happens? Say this is A1 E1, this is A2 E2, this is A3 E3. So this is A1 E1, this is A2 E2, this is A3 E3, this is B1 E1, B2 E2, B3 E3. Now, if you take a dot product, what you get? A1 B1, XX, A2 B2, YY, and A3 BG. So I'm just converting the whole concept into a situation which is called the Kronecker delta, which has been introduced in the slide number 11. Okay, this is the starting point of all the n-dimensional calculations. So which is the extension to your knowledge, whatever you have learned. What is that? delta ij is equal to +1 when I equal to j, delta ij is equal to 0 when I not equal to j. Okay. This is the definition that you carry forward in order to convert a dot product, like say suppose v dot w. So delta I vi and delta j vj. Now delta I dot delta j, if you take a dot product, that leads to delta ij, vi wj, and this leads to vi wi. This summation symbol you can just get rid of. Okay, just the way we have written, summation symbol you can get rid of. Whenever there are repeated indices, that means there is a summation that is present. Great. So we could do up to the simple operation, which is called the dot product. Now, what is a cross product? What is a cross product? So when I have two vectors, say suppose one vector is a1. Say suppose one vector is let me just take it as a kind of capital A. Capital A cross capital B. These are the two vectors that you are thinking about. These are the two vectors. That means this is A1, E1, A2, E2, A3, A3, E3, and this is B1, E1, B2, E2, and B3, E3. So how do I go for a cross product here? A cross B. What is that? Say suppose this is I. Say suppose then you have J. These are the unit vectors. Then what you do? You look at the components, that is A1, then you go for the A2, and then you go for the A3. Okay, these are the components of A, and then you write B1, so B2, and B3. So if you determine this determinant, you are able to really get what? You are really able to get the cross product. Okay, you are really able to get this cross product. This cross product. So what is this cross product? It is going to be this determinant. If you evaluate this determinant, you are able to get the cross product. So essentially, you may see that cross product, dot product leads to what? The dot product leads to a scalar. Whereas the cross product leads to what? This cross product leads to a vector. Why? Because you can see there will be an I component. What will be the I component? A2B3 minus A3B2. What will be the J component? Minus of A1B3, A3B1. Okay. And what will be the Z component? K. It will be A1B2, and A2B1. So you can straight away see there are three components which is coming from the determinant. Okay. But then we have a much smarter way of expressing this cross product. Okay. So how do I express this cross product in terms of initial notation? First, I write what? This is to be AI, BI, sorry. AI, EI, okay, cross BJ, EJ. Okay. Now, when I do that, what do I know about cross product? That if I have A cross B, if I have A, if I have B, this has two different directions. If I take a cross product between these two, the cross product will be perpendicular to both A and B. This is the definition of the cross product. Correct? So what will happen? What do I get from here? I write this to be epsilon ijk. I'm coming. What is this epsilon ijk? Okay. Then what do I write? I write AI. Okay. BJ. And then what I write? EK. So this is X coordinate. So this is Y coordinate. Now when I take a cross product, you see I am giving the Z coordinate, which is EK. This particular symbol is called the permutation symbol. Okay, epsilon ijk. I'm coming to that. And then I keep like AI, BJ, EK. So you can see this is a vector. This is a vector. If I take a cross product, I end up getting another vector, which is EK, which is perpendicular to EI and EJ. Now this entire can be summarized to a very small equation, which is epsilon ijk ai bj ck. Now, one home assignment I give, you just prove it that this is equal to that. But before proving, you need one more information here. What is the information? You can see what is an permutation symbol. Permutation symbol is epsilon ijk is 1 when you have ijk, all three are different. Like 1, 2, 3, like 2, 3, 1. This is equal to 1 when this is not only different, but this is also cyclic, like 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then what? 2, 3, 1. Then 3, 1, 2. So these are all called cyclic. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1. How am I going? It is all one after the other. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1. Okay, 3, 1, 2. So it's a cyclic process. For that, epsilon ijk is plus 1. Okay, epsilon ijk is minus 1 for what? They are different, but then they are non-cyclic, like 3, 2, 1. Okay, like 1, 3, 2. Okay, they are non-cyclic. Otherwise, if there is any repeated one, then this will be 0. Great. Now, if you enforce this to this determinant, okay, you will really say, suppose this is a determinant. This determinant can be summarized as epsilon ijk, a1i, a2j, and a3k. Exactly, this is what I am doing there. V cross W. You have to evaluate this determinant, and this determinant will be what? Epsilon ijk. Okay. Now you say, suppose you have taken here j and k as delta. So you see this is why this is taken as delta I, and then delta I, Vj, and Wk. Okay. So ijk you can see as delta I, Vj, Wk. So this is what is written here in terms of the permutation symbols. So ai, ei, bj, ej, epsilon ijk, ai, bj, and ek. When I can be equal to 1 to n, b can be equal to 1 to n, and k can be equal to 1 to n. Great. Now, once we are through with the elementary dot and cross product, then we can really revisit the variables and things that we were doing. So now you see that this is what you are doing in the plus 10, 10th and plus 2 standards, where you were evaluating rather a 3-dimensional space. You know, the addition, the dot product, the cross product, the box products. Okay. But then this you can do using what? Say, suppose if I take A dot B cross C. Okay. If I want to evaluate this, how do I do that? So you are saying that, sir, we want to evaluate A dot B cross C. Here bracket is necessary. Why? Because otherwise this is commutative, but this is not commutative. That's why bracket is necessary. So what is my B cross C? First, let me evaluate. So suppose I write that epsilon ijk. Okay, say bi, cj, and ek. Clear? I'm just writing very simple manner. And now what I write A I write as am. I choose another index which is other than ijk, am, en, and then I have a dot product. So simply I have first evaluated A, I evaluated B cross C is also a vector. This I have expressed like that, and then I have expressed am, em like this, which is the vector here, and then I have to have a dot product between these two. Now we know that if we have a dot product between the two vectors, what is going to happen? M and ek are going to be what? They are going to become so equal to what? This will lead to what? This will lead to a Kronecker delta, which is delta m, delta mk. Then I can write epsilon ijk, which is another indicial notation. Then I will have straightforward am. Okay. Then I will have bi and cj. Okay. Now delta mk means m equal to k. I can go for m equal to k. So finally, what I will get? I will get epsilon ijk. Okay. Then I will get ak. Bi Cj. So when I collapse M and K, K will become M or M will become K. It can be epsilon Ijm M Bi Cj also. Now if I really expand this, what am I going to get? If I really expand this, I'm going to get this particular thing. So you can see that going from three-dimensional space and the determinants, what is the advantage of the notation that you are using here, that you are using in this place? This is you are able to now handle all the n-dimensional space equations. Okay, so we can really make use of this type of mathematics in terms of just going for the differential forms. Okay, so say suppose there is a point. Suppose there is a point. Vinod, can you help Rishika Patwa? She is unable to join. Just help her. Okay, she has written an email. Just help her in joining. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, so let us go back to our lecture. So now, say with this basic information, say suppose when I start modeling, I have a coordinate system like this, and then I have a position vector which is r at a particular point. That also I can define as x, y, z. And this can also be defined in the vectorial form. So how do I define a position vector? Say in case of a vectorial space, say suppose if I have a coordinate system like this, say suppose this is my coordinate system. So this is my x, say suppose this is my y, say suppose this is my z. Any point, how do I define? I can define as xi, ei. So x1 e1, x2 e2, and x3 e3, which can be written as, which is written here as, say suppose xyz, small x capital X, this is the unit vector, small y capital Y, this is the unit vector, small z capital Z, this is the unit vector. And say suppose this is a differential element dl, that can be written how do you write the differential element? You can just write this to be dxi ei. Okay, I'm deliberately using different notations so that you get accustomed to use of different types of notations. Initially you are using x cap, y cap, z cap as unit vectors, but then with time you have to be comfortable with different types of notation. So even a position vector in a space, even a point in a space can be expressed as a position vector, and that position vector can also be expressed in a vectorial indicial form as well as in the differential vectorial indicial form. What is the use of it? The use of it comes here. Say suppose you want to know, in the last class we were discussing about, say suppose you want to know that there is a space, there is a space-time situation. You have a space-time situation, say time equal to t, you have a coordinate system like this, okay, where you want to know the variation of temperature across the space as well as across time. So what is your variable? Your variable is t, x, y, and z. This is your variable. This is what you want to know. And you remember that we were talking about, say suppose the heat will flow when there is a temperature gradient. So we were writing say T2 minus T1. Okay, then what we were dividing? We were dividing this by delta X. Okay, this is a very gross information. Okay, now if I am expressing this in a differential form, how am I going to do? I'm going to express this in a differential form, like I'm going to write it as dt by dx. This is a differential one-dimensional form. Okay, but now if I really want to express in this three-dimensional space where this is x, where this is y, and where this is z, then how exactly I'm going to take into account of this variation of temperature with respect to time and space. Is varying with respect to time as well as is varying with respect to space. So what should I do? What should I do? I should do this. Like say I write this variable in the form of what? I write this variable in the form of the gradient of t. Okay, it's a very cryptic and initial notation, gradient of t. What is this gradient of t? What do I mean by the gradient of t? What do I mean by the gradient of t? The gradient of t is nothing but, when I write gradient of t, gradient is an operator, okay, which can be expressed as what? Del x I, okay, del y j, and del z k. Okay, and then I'm doing this operation with respect to my variable, that is t, and that t is a function of what? T, small t, x, y, and z. Now this part I can write what? This part I can write what? Del xi ei. I have to do a little bit more practice with this Microsoft. It's a very beautiful tool, but then more practice is necessary for my handwriting. Okay, yeah. So del xi ei. So I am just converting this into the vectorial form, and then what I do, I put this t, and that is what is called the driving force or the temperature gradient. So here you can see that what is dt is meaning, change of temperature is meaning del t by del x dx, del t by del y dy, del t by del z dz, correct? Now this can be differentiated into two forms. One is del t by del x x cap, del t by del y y cap, del t by del z del cap. Let us do that in front of you, then it will be very, very clear for all of you. So what is t if I have a situation, like, if I have a situation like what? Say suppose t is a function of what? T is a function of, say suppose x, y, x, comma, y, comma, z. Okay. Now how do I get dt? What is dt? dt will be equal to what? Del t by del x dx, partial differential of t with respect to x, keeping y and z constant dx, plus del t by del y dy is a partial differential with respect to, this is dy, plus del t by del z dz. Okay. So these are all, this del t by del x means, you have here y and z as constant. Del t by del y means here you have x and z are constant. And del t by del z means here you have x and y as constant. Okay. So under that sort of situation, you can really write what? You can really write that this del t by del x, this part, you can write as, you can divide this into two parts. One is del t by del x into x cap. Okay. Plus del t by del y into y cap. Okay. Plus del t by del z into z cap. This is your which part? This is this gradient part. Correct? Whereas the other part, what you can write dx into x cap, okay, plus dy into x cap, sorry, dy into y cap, plus dz into Z cap. This is what is happening here. Like you are decomposing this into two parts, and then what you are doing, you are expressing these two as the dot product between these two. So you are putting a dot product between these two. So essentially, I can write the entire thing as how much? Entire thing I can write as the gradient of T dot di. This is what we have defined in the previous slide, that this is a position vector. Radiation. Okay. So any questions you have? Because I believe, like, this is a little bit tricky. So if you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, I may go ahead. Great. I mean, these things will take a little bit time because you are listening this concept or aspect for the first time, many of you. Okay. So you have to make sure that you work hard here in order to get control over it. So I make the life a little bit more complicated now from here. So now what I understand what is a vector, what is an initial notation. Okay, how do I express a vector in the form of initial notation? How do I carry out dot product? How do I carry out cross product? And what is a gradient operator? Now the beauty of the game is that temperature, this is a scalar property. Temperature is a scalar property. But this gradient is a vector property. So when I operate gradient with respect to temperature, what I do, I convert the scalar into a vector, which is gradient of T. Okay, which is the driving force. Temperature itself is a scalar property. Temperature is one place I measure, another place I measure, another place I measure, right? But now when somebody wants me to to evaluate what is the temperature gradient, so that is the variation across the space, and which I evaluate as the gradient of T, which is my driving force for any heat transfer process. So essentially, you can see here this operation of gradient with respect to temperature. It's a conversion of a scalar into a vector. When I'm looking for a scalar parameter at a particular space, like temperature, like speed, okay, these are all scalars. These are all measurement units. But when I see the variation of velocity, that gives me the acceleration and that gives me the force. Variation of speed, that gives me the acceleration, and from there I get force. Similarly, variation of temperature gives me the driving force, and from there I get what is the amount of energy transfer that is possible. And that variation is always with respect to space, and it is called spatiotemporal. That is with respect to space and with respect to time. There are two concepts of space and time. One is space-time decoupled, and the other is space-time coupled. Right now, the operation is space-time decoupled. I'm fixing a time, and there I am looking for the temperature difference. I can also really see, how is the difference in time, and then there can be a coupling between space-time also, which is perhaps beyond the scope of this particular course, and we don't take into account that. First, let us understand in a decoupled manner whether we are able to handle this or not. Right? So now if you go back and see, say suppose this is a vector, this is a vector. If I do a dot product, what I get a scalar. This is a vector, this is a vector. If I do a cross product, what I get a vector. But this vector is perpendicular to this and that both. So essentially, dot product of two vectors leads to a scalar quantity. Is the projection of one on the other. Okay. Whereas if I take a cross product, I get another vector from these two vectors, which is perpendicular to both of these vectors. Now let us see this one. What does it happen? So B cross C gives me a vector. Now, if I take a vector dot product between two vectors, I end up getting what? So this will lead to a scalar. You can see straight away there is no x, y, z. This will lead to a scalar. Similar for A dot C cross B, B dot C cross B, right? Now say suppose A cross B cross C. A cross B is a vector which is perpendicular to both A and B. Say suppose this is D. Now D cross C will be a vector which is perpendicular to both D and C. So A cross B cross C will lead to what? It will lead to another vector. Now let us see, like, B dot C, this one. Say B dot C is a scalar, A dot C is a scalar. Now A is a vector, B is a vector, so this will lead to a vector. Right? So now, if you do this sort of exercises, mental exercises, you will end up looking at, say, R is a position vector, DI, it's a differential position vector. Okay. DT is what? Change of temperature. DT is what? Gradient of T is a vector. DI is a differential vector, but the dot product between these two, so DT will be a scalar. It's the overall change in the total space. So DT is a scalar, but it's a combination of, it's a dot product between. So if you really think about the change of temperature across the space, and if you really look at the position vectors associated with the three-dimensional space, if you do a dot product between these two, you are able to really get the change in the temperature across the space, the total change in the temperature across the space. So this is the reason why we were studying these dot products, because it gives me the driving force associated with the heat transfer. Great. So more or less we have now through A dot B is the dot product, A cross B is the cross product. Gradient of T gives me the vector associated with the change in temperature, which eventually gives me the dt when I take a dot product with respect to the position vector. Similarly, you can think about in fluid mechanics, you are talking about divergence. V is a vector, velocity vector. This is the gradient operator. Now, if you take the vector, two vector dot product, what will it lead to? It will lead to what? It will lead to a scalar. So you can straight away see that this is nothing but you are having x cap del del x, y cap del del y, z cap del del z, and v x cap, vy y cap, vz z cap. If you take a dot product, these x they x dot x, y dot y, z dot z, they cancel out and then they become like that. Now, if I do in an indicial form, how will it survive? How will I get? Say suppose I am trying the divergence of v. Here v is also a vector, divergence is also a vector. How do I write? So I write as del xi ei. Okay. Dot vj ej. Okay. Now ei dot ej, this is the dot product that is coming in between. So ei dot ej will lead to what? It will lead to delta ij, which is the Kronecker delta. So this will lead to what? Del Vj by del Xi. Now I equal to J, this one survives. So this will lead to what? Del Vi del Xi. Which means what? If I just expand del Vx del X, del Vy del Y, del Vz del Z, which you see here, del Vx del X, del Vy del Y, del Vz del Z. So you can straight away see the divergence will leads to a, see this is the gradient operator, which is a vector. This is a velocity operator, which is a vector. If you take a divergence between these two, then what happens? You end up getting a scalar, which is del Vx del X, del Vy del Y, del Vz del Z, which can be expressed in an indicial manner that del Vi del X. It's a single notation. You are compressing the entire thing. Whenever there are repeated indices, then you have the summation, and that summation has been expressed here in terms of the addition. Okay. Similarly, you can evaluate. This is the physical interpretation of divergence. That if in your continuity equation compressible fluid, what you do? You say that this is equal to 0. This is your incompressible flow equation, right? So what does it mean? It means that, say suppose if you have a velocity field, this vector these vectors, the length of the vectors are not changing. They are uniform. Now, if this is not equal to 0, if it is not equal to 0, then you may see situation like this. Along a streamline, you may see that there is a change in the length of the vector, which is perhaps, you can imagine that for a compressible flow, you can see along a streamline, there will be the change in the magnitude of the vector, and that you may see something like this and something like that. So these are all, this is a divergence free velocity field, and these are all the fields with some divergence. Okay, so this is a physical interpretation. If del dot v equal to 0, you will have a field which is like this. In a laminar flow, you can see parabolic profile, right? The question may come that you may see a parabolic profile. So the profile comes out to be what? You may see like there is a pipe flow. So there is a pipe flow, and the profile comes like this, right? But then if you look at a particular streamline, you may see that the vectors will be of same size. Okay, this is the highest, maybe the maximum here. But say near the wall, it will be smaller, but they will be of same size. If you go towards the x direction, you may see that they are of same size. So that also again indicates that it is a divergence. It is a divergence free field in case of a incompressible flow. Great. Now, what is the physical interpretation of curl? You can now see del cross B. How do I go for it? So E1, E2, E3, gradient is del del x, del del y, del del z, and then V is V1, V2, V3. If you take a cross product, then you end up getting something like this. Now, this is a field where you will see that del cross V will become 0. That means there is no curl or rotation. Say suppose if you take a spoon and you start rotating water in a glass. Okay, so what will happen? You may see that this glass will have a swirl. So that's a type of flow pattern is a situation where this del cross V is finite. Whereas in this sort of situation there is no rotation. In this sort of situation there is no rotation. So in those cases del cross V will be equal to 0. So curl 0 means it is an irrotational flow. It's a physical interpretation, right? And then you come up with a set of situations. So suppose you want to know the gradient of T. Okay. Now divergence of gradient of T is a scalar, gradient of T is a vector. T is a scalar, gradient of T is a vector. But divergence of gradient of T is what? It will be again a scalar. So this is a vector. If you put a gradient to a vector, that will be a gradient to a scalar, that will become a vector. But then if you take a dot product with another vector, this will become a scalar. Curl of a gradient of T is this. Now say suppose this will become a vector. Now this is another vector. If you take a cross product, this will be another vector which will be perpendicular to this as well as perpendicular to that. Now divergence of V is a scalar. If you take a gradient of that, then this will become what? This will become a vector. Okay. Divergence of a curl. So curl is a vector. If you take divergence, this will become scalar. Curl of a curl. So like say suppose if you take this is a vector, the curl will be another vector. So now you may see different ways of evaluating the variation of the variables. Say suppose T, which is a measurable variable, V, speed, velocity, different directions you can measure. And these are all very, very important properties in transport, in fluid, in heat transfer, in mass transfer. You will encounter this parameter one way or other. It's very important to understand that. Say suppose I want to show a line integral, right? Each position vector I can call as dl, and v is my velocity. If I take a dot product between these two, I'll be able to really explain this phenomenon. Say suppose I want to know the flux that is normal to a vessel. How do I define? So I define the area to be dA, which is a vector. This is the x direction, this is the y direction, this is the z direction. Okay, and if I take a dot product between v and dA, I will be able to really tell the fluxes that is going out. So this is v here. Now you can go for gradient of T dA. That means how the temperature is changing across A. We'll come to that, when we'll derive these conduction equations and all. Okay, so you can see different types of interpretations associated with that. These are all theorems. Like one is for the line integral, one is from volume to surface integral. This is the divergence theorem. Okay, so the total fluxes, if I just do a cyclic integral of all the surfaces, v dot dA, what I will get, I'll see what is the total change of the momentum that is there inside the volume. So it's called the divergence theorem. Okay, and this is perhaps called the Green's theorem, which is the total curl. So suppose, what does it physically mean? There are many such swirls that are there inside. So suppose you go to Brahmaputra river and start observing many swirls on the river. That, if you evaluate this particular parameter, what will happen? You will get v dot dl of cyclic integral. That means overall the circulation is nothing but the summation of all circulation. So physical meaning of this particular aspect is this. So dA is the area. dA is the area. Okay, vector, area vector. Del cross v is the strength of each. Now, if I add them, then this becomes the velocity dot dl with the position vector of all these things. So, similarly, different types of variables that are really possible in order to interpret. Say, suppose u dot v cross w. This is what a dot b cross c that we were doing, right? So v is the v is one velocity vector, w is another velocity vector. If I do a cross product between these two, I get a vector. Say, suppose x, which is perpendicular to both. But then if I take this, that will also be a vector. Now, if I take a dot product with respect to a vector, what I get another scalar. So this will lead to a scalar. Now you can see, if you evaluate the determinant, then you will end up getting a scalar like this. Okay, so today I stop here because only thing that is remaining in terms of the interpretation is tensor. So I just open the forum for a few questions. Yeah, questions? Any questions? No questions? Anybody, any question? So these notations will be very, very helpful for you in terms of, like, now as we go ahead. See, up to this point, up to 12th standard, you have done one-dimensional calculations. Most of the calculations that you have done, the geometrical aspects were not taken into account. But engineering is all about including geometry with the physics. So and integration of, like, time and space complexities. So same equations or similar equations or advanced equations associated with different phenomena, you have to really integrate them, these geometrical parameters. So it is very, very important that you get hold of these initial notations. You get hold of the operations between the vectors, operation between a vector and a scalar, operation between the tensor and a vector, which we are going to do in the beginning of the next class to finalize the whole thing. Okay, typically it takes about 2-3 classes, in order to complete the whole aspect. But then hopefully once we finish that, this particular lecture slides, the slides of this lecture has been prepared with the vision that you will be really able to interpret, most of the equations that are related to the Newtonian mechanics in a much, much more simpler manner if you are really comfortable with these equations. Okay, so since you do not have any question, I stop here. And I hope that in next class, you come up with some questions, okay? Because this is very important. Otherwise, I will start. I mean, if you don't understand this, then a lot of notations that will happen in future, you will struggle to get them. Okay. Okay then. Thank you, and we meet at 12 noon tomorrow. Thanks a lot.